Welcome to the SEO.co Search Engine Optimization Podcast. Digital marketing essentials and next-level tactics. From off-site and on-site optimization to persuasive selling and everything in between. You'll learn actionable tips on what it takes to outright and outrank your competition.
Content marketing ROI. How to measure your content marketing campaign performance. You've got a content marketing strategy, but is it working? If you want to be a successful content marketer, it's not enough to do what you think is effective. You need to objectively measure whether what you're doing is effective or not, and then take the appropriate corrective actions. Many marketers don't understand what's necessary for measuring and analyzing a content marketing campaign. And even if they do, they may have trouble interpreting the data. What Works in Online Marketing Survey, 40% of SEO agency respondents indicated that they were not sure about their ROI from on-site content marketing efforts, and 43% weren't sure about ROI from their off-site efforts. Clearly, many marketers find it challenging to measure ROI from their content marketing efforts. When you're first starting out, measurement and analysis can be intimidating, but data measurement and analysis are objective and complex. I've written this guide to help you better understand the importance of measurement and analysis, and how to do it effectively for your content marketing campaign. Why analysis is important. Before I dig into the details of measurement and analysis, I want to explain the importance of analysis in the first place. Why is this phase of the process so important to the success and health of your campaign? Setting and measuring goals. First, analysis can help you define, set, and eventually measure your content goals. Defining success. There are many possible types of goals your brand can set for its content marketing campaign, and there's no right or wrong way to go about it. For example, you could focus exclusively on building a better reputation for your brand, and work on getting featured in high-authority publishers. Or, you could focus on customer retention and drive your efforts toward your help and support content. You could focus more on generating traffic, getting more conversions, or just reaching a wider social audience so you can attract more followers. How can analysis help you figure out what goals you want to set? When you're first starting out, most of your goals will be speculative or based on preliminary forms of research like market research or competitive research. But once you get rolling, you'll have access to far more in-depth and brand-specific pools of data, which can tell you exactly how your content is performing. Here, you'll be able to see where your strengths and weaknesses are. For example, if you see that your conversion rates are at an all-time high, but your traffic is lackluster, you can adjust your goals to focus on attracting more traffic. You'll also have a baseline for comparison here. If you know you're getting 1,000 visitors a month with your current strategy, 1,200 next month is a pretty realistic target. Goal criteria. When you're setting goals to measure and analyze, you'll want to keep some important criteria in mind. The SMART criteria is always a good standby here, even though there's some variability in what SMART can actually stand for. Wikipedia says they stand for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Your goals should be specific, so you can have an objectively comparable number for your data. They should be measurable, obviously, so make sure your goals are relevant to something you can measure in your analytics platforms. Make them achievable and relevant, so they're actually going to matter for your brand, and set a limit when it comes to timing. Once you know your goals, you can establish what you're actually going to measure, and how you're going to measure it. Ongoing development. Remember that the process of setting and achieving goals is an ongoing one. It's something that should be revisited, modified, and adjusted as you gather more information about your campaign. For example, you might start with a goal of increasing traffic, and consistently move your targets up as you build more and more momentum, but as you reach a plateau, you may have to shift your focus or rein in your ambitions to hit more feasible, meaningful targets. Identifying successes and failures. Experimentation in marketing is vital to the long-term success of your campaign. If you keep things too consistent or predictable, your campaign will end up becoming stagnant. Experiments, however, are risky. Conceptually, you might identify them as strong opportunities for development, but in practice, they may see very different results. Analytics is your tool to find out which of your experiments are working and which ones aren't. Depending on how you approach the problem, you can set up an A/B test to compare two variations of a campaign independently. For example, you might launch two ebooks at a similar time and in a similar way to determine which one is more appealing to your target audience. But you might also decide to simply change something about your campaign, such as targeting a new niche or ramping up the frequency at which you publish new content. In these cases, you'll need to compare large swaths of data with others from a different time period. In any case, analytics is the only way to know for sure whether one of your new strategies is working or not. Otherwise, you're shooting blind, and you could end up wasting your time and money on strategies that aren't effective. Generating new ideas. If you're gathering enough data, you can use analytics to strategically generate new ideas for your content campaign. For example, let's say you're evaluating how effective various pieces of content have been in terms of attracting links and holding user interest once they're on site. You've developed a series of infographics that seems to be generating a lot of attention, and you've also written a new blog post about the history of the pogo stick that has seen a huge influx of visitors. Knowing these two trends, you could come up with a hybrid piece, like an infographic about pogo stick's history. Looking more broadly, you could also identify key opportunities based on the types of traffic you're attracting or other metrics that inspire you to pursue another line of development. For example, let's say you notice there's a surprising number of people from Twitter visiting your site, but you don't use Twitter for promotion very much. You could take advantage of this by increasing your efforts on Twitter, but also catering to that audience by writing snappier, Twitter-optimized headlines. Peruse datasets you wouldn't normally think about, and see if there are any outliers that stand out to you or give you the inspiration to try something new. 6 Keys to Success in Measurement and Analysis. Next, let's take a look at some of the key principles that will lead you to success when measuring and analyzing your content campaign. Throughout this guide, I'll be digging deep into the process of measuring, how to interpret data, and what datasets to pay attention to. But first, you need to understand the following 6 high-level rules of the analysis game. 1. Measure everything. First, make it a point to measure everything you possibly can. Fortunately, we live in a digital age where most systems will track your performance for you. For example, if you syndicate your content on Facebook, Facebook will happily tell you how many impressions, views, and click-throughs it received, sparing you the trouble of any formal setup process. However, other systems require some degree of preparatory work. For example, before you can start taking advantage of Google Analytics, you'll need to install a tracking script. Even if you have specific goals or specific platforms in mind when building your campaign, it's a good idea to measure data with the broadest funnel possible. It's always better to have more data than you need than to come up short or overlook something. 2. Measure consistently. Some marketers set up their analytics systems with the best intentions, believing they'll be dutiful about checking in regularly. Others only set up tracking systems because that's what they're told to do. In both cases, it's common for marketers to neglect to establish a pattern of consistent measurement. You need to be consistent in terms of when and how you measure. You'll want to check in at the same time every month, or every 2 weeks, or whatever you decide, and you'll need to be consistent in terms of what data you evaluate. This consistency will help keep you accountable for your goals, but will also allow you to have an apples-to-apples comparison, giving you more accurate insights and conclusions. 3. Choose the right tools. There are hundreds of marketing analytics tools available on the market these days, and new ones seem to be emerging all the time. Many of them are quite good. Most of them could probably help you. But only a handful of them will track exactly what you need them to track in a format that's convenient and relevant for your brand. It's going to take some time for you to run evaluations and figure out what the best platforms are for your brand. Thankfully, most platforms offer free trials so you can figure it out quickly. Google Analytics is going to be a major help to you, but there are a number of other strong tools to consider. I'll be exploring several of these in the final section of this guide. 4. Relate everything back to goals. Your data is only useful if you're capable of tying it back to something significant for your campaign. The conduits you'll use most often here are your goals. So let's say one of your blog posts has attracted 20% more traffic than your other posts. How has this helped you reach your main goal? What can you learn from this increase that can help you reach your next goal? It sounds redundant, but data without purpose has no meaning. Frame everything in a context that leads back to bigger picture thinking. 5. Avoid the temptation of confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is a common and deadly threat to the average content marketer. The idea is pretty simple. We tend to seek out and/or overvalue information that already falls in line with what we believe. This is true even if we're not fully conscious of our own beliefs. How does this relate to content marketing analysis? Let's say you've launched a new strategy that you believe will increase reader engagement with your brand. With this belief in mind, you cruise your datasets, looking specifically for information to justify this belief. You see a handful of extra comments from readers and voila, your belief is verified. However, you may neglect other important indicators, such as bounce rates, exit rates, or social shares, that contradict that evidence, because you weren't looking for it. Try to remain as neutral as possible when running your analysis, hard as it may be. 6. Make your insights actionable. This is the hardest step for many marketers. They'll be able to give you lots of numbers, objective takeaways, and maybe even plot a few graphs to project the data, and those insights will all be true. But what are you supposed to actually do with those insights? Remember, your data is only useful if it leads to some kind of change. Aim for all of your insights to connect to some formal action.
Thank you for joining us on the SEO.co podcast. We appreciate your time. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show and visit SEO.co for more resources based on today's topic, as well as access to more podcast episodes to help you improve your site's long-term SEO success.